had a couple of impacts outside of the one everyone's used to, working remotely, which I'll touch on. Because our business is functionally we rent apartment units to about 27,000 people, we can't shut down our frontline staff to protect them. So what that's translated into is us having to do some high-level tracking and reporting to ensure that if one of our staff was traveling, they get back, they end up being properly isolated for at least the 14-day period, if not longer. If they were exposed to the virus, again, isolating them so that they don't go in and infect any of our tenants in their properties. The second issue is tracking our tenants. Any of them that have been traveling, obviously the reporting on that is very tricky. Or anyone who's been exposed to the virus, and preventing our staff from going into their units to do any maintenance, repairs, or critical work for that 14-day period. And if they need to go into those units, making sure that either our staff are properly trained and outfitted with the proper PPE, or alternately assigning that type of work to a contractor who has the correct equipment to go in there safely and do whatever maintenance or critical services are required for the time being. So that's been the first and foremost on our minds. The second part is the same issue everyone else is dealing with, so sharing data remotely, remote meetings, no meetings in person, no business travel, and managing that across a coast-to-coast business with all time zones available in Canada. Well, again, at the base level, it's protecting our guests and our residents and our staff from themselves and from each other. So it's monitoring any exposure and then isolating anyone who is exposed for the mandatory 14-day period. That's the first phase. The second is if work needs to be done, prioritizing that, and then assigning contractors or staff that have the proper safety training. So that means full face mask, gloves, possibly suits to those properties. And then any properties that have been exposed, we're working on developing cleaning protocols for hallways, common areas. I know we've shut down gym and common use facilities within our properties, swimming pools, in line with sort of the national guidelines and the various provincial guidelines out there. For us, it's an evolving scenario. So this sort of falls within our pandemic preparedness risk management plan that is being sort of chaired. We've created a committee that reports directly to the executive that meets daily to go through these issues, bring in resources, prioritize responses, and it includes various members of both executive and director level positions in the company. You know, your usual HR, IT, health and safety, operations type working group. So it can be very agile, and they've been empowered to make decisions. For the first, I don't know, we just finished or have almost fully finished implementing ClearRisk. We turned it on for claims and incident reporting not that long ago, and we were using it to gather data for incidents. This pandemic sort of fell outside of, I guess, the design criteria that we wanted to implement. It was nice that Mike of your team came out with sort of your pandemic module last week. And I think your team's turned it around pretty quickly. So now instead of our call center receiving various reports or management reports and trying to track all that data down, we're in the process of implementing your portal, which will be available to our staff, to our call center, and to our residents to be able to report these incidents. And we're hoping to launch that later today to sort of track who's in and out of which units, who's been exposed, who hasn't, which buildings, and then give that information to our working group in order for them to focus their responses better. Our biggest learning was, well, we had written an incident response plan. We had a preparedness plan. We hadn't taken it far enough into testing scenarios, and we hadn't really stress tested it as a company. It was well understood at the executive level, not so much being pushed out to the regions, operating in about 62 distinct regions across the country. That's turning into quite the challenge of communication and keeping people updated. We're starting to use ClearRisk to send out reports to those various groups and keep everyone in line and up to speed. If we were, hopefully never to do this again, but if we were to go through this scenario again, I know it's going to be top of mind a couple times a year to start stress testing the regions and bring them in some of the scenarios so that they're actually trained, they understand how to respond. And for our new managers, prioritizing some of this training to have them up to speed faster in that onboarding process.